Hello everyone. In today's lecture, we'll learn about functions in Python. Functions are basically a block of code that performs a specific task. It makes our code reusable and avoids writing duplicate code. In other words, we can say that function is just a program within a program. For example, we have a small chunk of code that is needed in our program again and again. So this is our code. This is our program in which this particular chunk of code is needed again and again. So instead of writing those lines of code after like again and again, we can just define a function, or we can convert those line of code into a function, and then whenever those lines of code are required, we can just call upon that function through its name in just one line. And then as soon as we call upon, as soon as the code reaches the statement, it will go back to that function where it is defined, and then it will read the statements that are inside that defined function and will execute those particular statements. So there will be no need to write this whole uh, line of code again. In just one line, we can just call the function and use these lines in through that function. We'll make things more clear. So first, let's see how the syntax of a function works or looks like. Initially, when we define a function, we write def, which stands for define. So def means define, then function underscore name. We write the name of the function, and then in the parenthesis we give input parameters, and later we give a colon. After the colon, whatever code we have, that should be indented to show that it is included in the body of that function. So all this code, line of code, is indented and is inside the body of the function. So it is good practice to initially, as soon as we write a function, define a function, we give a small comment that is called a doc string. Now this doc stands for documentation. So this documentation string is basically few lines that describes about the function, and it is a good programming practice to make a doc string whenever we define a function. Later we write our statements or the line of code that is required, or the task that that function needs to do. Let's observe an example. In this example, I am writing a function. The name of the function is greetings, and in that I am giving an input parameter that is name, and this is a variable basically. So this variable can take any value. Now after defining, I am writing my doc string, which says what exactly my function is doing. So it is saying greet good morning to the user. Now what is the code statement that is that will be executed when this function will be called is the print. It will just print good morning message to the user. Now this block of code is a definition of the function. So here I am just defining my function, I am not using it. So if I'll run this cell, these particular lines will not be executed. Why? Because here in this I am just defining it, I am not calling the function. So the next important step is to call the function. So to call the function, initially I am taking a variable person in which I am giving a name string that is Madhav, and I am calling that function greetings. The name of the function is greetings. So I am calling and giving the input parameter as person, which is Madhav. So this string will go inside here, this name variable, and then when I call the function, then those statements that are inside those that defined function will get executed. So here I'm calling it from here, it will go back, see the defined function greeting, and see what code is written inside that function and will execute them. So here when I'll run this cell, when I'm running this greetings person, I'm getting an output good morning Madhav, which is getting executed by this line. Is it clear? So here an important note is that this function has no return statement. So in this function we do not exactly require any return value, because we just want our function to print a good morning message, and it just requires the name of the input or name of the user. So here I am defining greetings, name of the user, and just printing the message good morning. Now every function has a return value, and as in this case, if there is no return value, then the return value is none. So in this case we have a return value that is none, and it is just executing the statements. Now let's see the doc string. As I have talked earlier, a documentation string is the description of the code, and it is written just after the first function header. So as soon as we wrote this function header, we'll write the documentation string, which tells us about what exactly the function do. Now to know about the doc string, to get the doc string of any function, there is a command through which we can get to know the description of that function. So here it is print greetings dot underscore underscore doc underscore underscore. So there is double underscore doc double underscore. So as soon as I'll print this, I'll run this, I'll get the doc string of that function. So we can observe that this greetings function has a doc string, greet good morning to the user. This is a doc string, and we are getting the same output through this code. Okay, now let's see the functions that has return values or return statement. Now what exactly a return statement means? Return statement is kind of an exit for a function. Whenever we return a value, the code exits from that function, because it is just now returning what we require. So let's see with an example. Here I am defining a function that finds a square of a number. So my function name is find underscore square, and as an input I am giving a number num. Now again I am making a doc string which defines my function, that is finding the square of a number, and then I am executing some statement that is required to get an answer for my function. So here what I am doing, num underscore sqr is a square number, is just a variable basically, which is equal to whatever input number is there. So I'll just multiply it with itself, that is num into num, and then I'll return num underscore square. So this value is basically the square of the number num into num, that is input. Now as soon as I'll run this, again nothing will happen, because this is just the definition of the function. I have not called that function. Now in the next block of code, suppose I am calling that function, that is find underscore sqr, and then I am giving the number minus 23, or suppose minus 3. Now if I'll execute this, then I am getting the output 9, because this is the return value that is I am getting, and the return value is num underscore sqr, that is 9. Now again, if we want to observe the doc string of this function, we can print find underscore sqr dot double underscore doc double underscore. That's the name of the function dot double underscore doc double underscore. Let's print this. Yeah, finding the square of a number. This is what my function is talking about. Now we have seen the syntax of the function, both return and return with none value. Let's again observe how the working is going on, like how the function works. So in this diagram we can see that this is a small block in which I have defined my function. So def function name, whatever, if input parameter is required or if not required, no issue. then this is the header line basically of the function, and then these are the indented. We can observe that these are the indented statements. So all those indented statements means that these statements are inside that function. Then again in the normal indentation I'm writing my code, and then to call that function I'm writing the function name and calling it, and then it is going to that function and executing those statements that are inside that function, and after that it is coming back again to the original location from where it went, and then later it is executing the normal indented statements. So is it clear? So if we'll look at the steps of how this is going through, we can say that our code is getting started, it is going upside down, it will see this but will not go inside this, it will not execute this. Initially it will see that okay, there is a function that is defined here, but it will not go inside that function and execute. So when my code will run, so my first line that will run is this one, then my second is this, then my third in which I am calling the function, and then when I will call the function it will go back to that function block which includes several lines of code, and then because I have called it, now those lines of code will get executed. So this is my first line of code that will execute, second, third, and then not this one, instead it will go back and this will be my fourth one, this will be my fifth step, and then it will come back again to where my function name was called. Now this will be the sixth step and this will be the seventh step. So this is how is the working of a function. I hope it is clear. Next, another important concept is global and local scope. There is a big amount of confusion that students undergo when they name a variable or use variables inside a function or outside a function, and they mix up a lot of things. So let's make things clear here. Global and local scope. So basically, first we need to understand what is a scope. Now scope is an area of the source code or a container of variables. So in this I can explain through here. Yeah. Now this line is in my global scope, this line, all these line, but inside the function whatever lines are there, line of code, these are in my local scope because these are inside the function. So I'll mark L here. L is local scope, G is global scope. So all these who are normally indented, they are global scope. All those who are indented within a function, they are local scope. So scope, an area of the source code or a container of the variables. Now global scope is the code outside of all the function. As I said, these are the global scope. These are the codes that is outside this function. And code in a global scope cannot use local variables. This is important. The codes that are in the global scope, suppose, so I'll explain this with the example here. Yeah. So what I am doing here, I have made a global variable that is this global underscore var. Now this is a variable that is outside the function, and I am just giving it a string that is, this is a global variable. Okay. Next, I am defining a function that is check underscore scope. I have just named it check underscore scope. Now inside that, again I am writing a doc string that is telling the purpose of this function is to check the variable scope. Now in that function I am writing a local underscore var, and this is a local variable, so I am giving it a string name. So after that I am printing both global variable and the local var. So this is just the definition, so nothing is executed here, it will only get executed when this function is called. Now after this definition I'm coming back to my global scope, because see, there is no indentation here. It is coming back to its norm. This is the indentation that is showing that it is inside the function, and later there is no indentation. So this is how I am calling my function. I am calling the function check underscore scope, that is this. So in the next line with the normal indentation, I am calling that function. So as soon as I'll call this function, it will go inside that function and will execute all these three statements. So, and then again I am printing global and local variable. So if I'll run this, okay, so local var is not defined. Yeah, so I am getting an error. And why I am getting an error? See, here I have defined a local variable inside the function, and I am using that local variable in the global scope. I am printing local variable. So here the code does not know, the code in the global scope does not know where this local underscore var has come from, because it does not seize whatever is inside this definition, the function, because this is the local scope. So this is what is meant with this statement, that code in a global scope cannot use local variables. So this is a code in the global scope, and but this is a local variable. This is called local underscore var. So this variable cannot be used in the global scope. Again, a global variable can be accessed in a local scope, but a global variable, that is this here, this is a global variable, and I am printing that global variable into the local scope. The function is the local scope. Inside the function I am printing global scope, global variable. So it is easily printing. This is the output of this command, and this is the output of this command, and this is the output of, oh sorry, this is the output of this command. And when I'll run this command, I am getting an error because it is a local variable, because this is in the local scope and I am running it from the global scope. So it will give an error. Now if I want what, I got an error which says that you are using a local variable in the global scope, and this should not be done. So I would like that this local variable should be treated as a global and it should be used anywhere. So to do that, I can do global, then space local underscore var. So with this command, I'm initializing a variable, that is local var, as a global, and I'm initializing a global variable, that is local var. So if I'll run this, then I'm not getting any error, because I have made this local var as a global variable, and now it can be used from anywhere. It can be used from the global scope as well. So I hope this is all clear. It is important to know about this global and local scope so that you do not commit any mistakes. Okay, thank you.